Hey guys, it's Hope, and this is the My Lotus Moments podcast.
Someday at Christmas, men won't be boys, playing with bombs like kids play with.
For some, the holidays bring about the joyous opportunity to spend with loved ones, but for so many of us, the holidays can bring moments of sadness, grief, and isolation. We at Hope and Her wanted to focus on this population for the December blog series. This series focused on those who lost parents, relationships, and have broken family ties. This brings us to today's podcast, what the holidays are like for those who have broken family connections. Family connections can be broken for a number of reasons, but today my guest and I will talk about a story that we both can relate to, childhood sexual trauma by a family member. Before we get started, I would like to tell you a little bit about my guest. Erin Myers is the founder and CEO of Favorite Froze LLC. She resides in New Orleans, Louisiana, by way of California. She is a wife and mother of 2 daughters who inspired her to found Favorite Froze LLC. Erin uses her blogging platform to lead by operating in extreme faith, encourage through the Word of God, and have the confidence to walk in victory. Erin studied child psychology and business management, and she also contributes her writings to various blogs, including Hope and Her. Favorite Froze is a faith-based brand that was created to provide spiritual encouragement for women and girls through blogging, inspirational merchandise, and holding community events that promote empowerment, encouragement, and self-love. The purpose is to inspire them to overcome being their own obstacles in order to be the best versions of what God created them to be. Erin Myers, how are you?
I'm sorry.
Welcome.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to laugh.
That's okay. It's a struggle.
I'm great. How are you?
I'm good. So, tell us a little bit about the blog you wrote and what made you want to write about it.
So because around this time of year, everybody's gathering around a family and visiting family and, fellowshipping with the ones they love. And so I get really emotional around this time because I'm not as close with my family. So I decided to write about it. And I really didn't have intentions of really posting it on a blog. I just wanted to write to kind of get it all out because I had never really done it. And I was just like, you know what? It was such a healing to just be able to write about it. And I'm like, if I put it out there for someone else, then, I know I'll be able to bless somebody else as well.
For anybody out there who may not have read your blog, give a brief synopsis of what you wrote about.
So basically, when I was in my preteen years, I was molested by my stepfather. And I never spoke about it as a child. I was scared, like most. And I later opened up about it. I opened up about it to my husband first. After being married and having children, I finally had the courage to open up to my mother about what happened as a child with my stepfather. And she sat and listened to everything I said. I told her as much as I could remember. And she was at my house at the time, and she basically just got her keys and left. And so we didn't talk for a while, and over conversation on the phone one day, she just basically told me, I asked him if it was true. He said no, so I believe him.
Wow.
And it did something to me because, it took everything in me to be able to open up to her and let her know how I was feeling, what had happened, all these different things, all these emotions. I mean, I sat in her face crying and everything. And for her to tell me, she's siding with him.
Right.
So, our relationship has never really been the same after that. I really have distanced myself. And even after that, I still spoke to him. I still would call him dad. I mean, even after, being molested, as a preteen, I was still calling him dad. I was still give him hugs, basically live like nothing ever happened. I don't know, just later on as becoming an adult and opening up to, my husband or close friends about it and, reading about it or, seeing situations like that in movies and things like that, more people talking about it as I'm getting older. I'm like, you know what, something is wrong. This should not be okay. So I'm going to open up about it. Even to this day, we don't speak about it. And now it's to the point where if we do talk on the phone, which maybe might be a couple times a year, around holidays or Mother's Day, I might give her a call. She doesn't mention him. If she does, she uses his first name instead of calling him dad. She doesn't say anything about how he's doing or anything like that. And I don't ask either. So I feel like it's this kind of like unsaid thing where, yes, I believe you. And I'm going to respect you by not speaking of him, but we're not going to go any further than that.
So let me ask you something. What was your relationship like with your mom before you actually disclosed that information to her?
We didn't have like the super close relationship, but I was able to call her, and talk to her. And at the time, I mean, honestly, to be honest, they didn't really care for my husband. So we were already kind of distant. But, I'd be able to go, by her house and, spend time, bring my daughter over there. At the time, I just had one. We would talk and there wasn't as much awkwardness. But it's like once I came out to her about that, it severed the relationship even more so, I believe. I just remember her telling me that she just won't be able to trust me for a while. Like, I was just this liar. It wasn't easy. And I feel like, certain holidays, especially Mother's Day, is probably the hardest day for me. Because calling her on Mother's Day is just very like awkward on the phone and silent. I give her the update from the past year, how we're doing. Happy Mother's Day. How are you? And it's like, okay, well, I'll talk to you later. And we don't talk for months. I wish, you see, of course, you're on social media and you see people going to brunch with their moms and, gift giving and things like that. And I don't have that type of relationship with her. So I think that's one of like my biggest things. And then the fact that I have two girls, I can never see myself distancing my daughters like that. Yeah. I don't care what happens.
I could definitely relate. I have the same story. I was molested as a child. First, it was by an older cousin. And later on down the road, it was almost like right after that ended, the next one began with my mom's boyfriend. And I talked about this before. But what's interesting is the child abuse or the sex abuse from my cousin, who was about 7 to 8 years older than me. I can't remember. It happened when I was fairly young. And I never told anybody. But I wrote it in my diary and my mom found it. And so what she did was, obviously, she confronted me, but then she took me to the hospital. That's a whole nother podcast because that was a different traumatizing experience for me. I believe she told my grandma at the time. Again, I was very young, so I wasn't involved in the conversations. But I remember her going to my grandma taking that information to my cousin's parents. And I may have been in the room. I can't really remember, but all I can remember is hearing the conversation between them. And the very first thing I hear is me being blamed by my aunt and my uncle. The first thing I hear my uncle say is, well, Hope shouldn't be dressing like that. And, I'm dressing the way I'm being dressed. Like, I don't dress myself. Or, it's like not like I'm choosing to dress in a provocative way. I don't know what that means. And I'm like, so I have a teenage cousin who I'm supposed to police what I wear around my teenage cousin. Like, it was so confusing to hear, right? Right. From that, the family kind of separated. But then eventually we got back together and it was like nothing happened. I was forced to interact with this person from, I don't know, because I was fairly young, so I really can't put a good timeline to it, but I do know there was separation for a while. And then a little time later, we all came back. But again, through high school, through middle school, I was forced to interact with this person. He would still come over. I would still go over my aunt's house. And I'm like, how do I supposed to react to something like that? When even the adults will continue to put me in a situation that's not safe for me. But again, I went through high school, things like that, and I kind of separated myself. When I had the choice to not be around, I chose not to be around. But the weird thing is, because I never told anybody until last year when I made that YouTube video, it was something that was never spoken of again until I put that YouTube video out, and then I get backlash from the perpetrator's mom. And I'm like, were you not there? Do you not remember that it actually did happen? Why are you attacking me? So I can very much relate to the fact that not being believed, for one. But another thing is that it did create a separation between me and my mom, because my mom continued to call me to talk about this person. most of the times when we did talk, she was like, oh, you know, so-and-so doing this, and he has this girlfriend, and he's got this. And I would tell her over and over again, like, I don't care. I don't want you to talk to me about this person. Like, why do you continue to bring him up? Even as recently as maybe a year ago, when I went home for the holidays, he would come over, and I'm like, so my mom still chose to disregard how I felt because she would allow this person into her house, which I came back to. But she would continue to bring him up like nothing happened. So I can definitely relate to the fact that maybe, I don't know if my mom believed me or not, because the way that her reaction was after the fact, as far as like me growing up, it doesn't seem as so. Or maybe it's just the fact that they want to forget about it and act like it don't exist. And I think that's the same thing is going on with your mom. But regardless, it does create some friction, especially for me and my mom, because I don't want to go home. I don't want to talk to her because she's always going to, you know, so it's like, who do you choose as a parent? Are you going to choose your child, or are you going to choose the perpetrator? And obviously, as you can see, the perpetrator seems to win. I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Like I said, because I have 2 children now, and it's ironic to me that I ended up having 2 daughters. You know, no, I don't have a teenager yet, but even if something like that were to happen, or anything really, there would be nothing that would keep me between having a relationship with my children. And, you know, and that's what hurts the most is the fact that, you know, we went from talking all the time, we would, you know, go places together and things like that, to, I mean, not talking for years. And like, actually, her and my stepdad live in Alaska right now.
Oh, wow.
And that's where it occurred. They moved out there again in 2012, I believe, which was the same year that I opened up to her. And when they moved, it was really sudden, and we really didn't speak after that. Like, and I have not seen them since then, actually.
Since 2012.
Yeah, and it's about to be 2018.
Wow.
And so, like I said, those random phone calls, usually from me, are the only times I would talk to her. And so I just was like, how do you do that? You know, I'm the only girl. I have 2 other brothers. And I just don't understand it. Like, I can't comprehend. I really can't. If it were me, like, I don't care what's going on, financial situation, whatever, like, okay, you know, we're going to talk about this. We gotta have an action plan. Something's about to happen, but this is not okay, you know? And I feel like even hearing your story in the Black community, it's just so like, it's taboo, and it's always swept under the rug because it happens more often than not in so many households.
Definitely. Yeah.
But it's like, it's just so, it's okay. Like, whatever, you know, okay, you'll heal, you'll get over it. Just like anything else, depression, whatever else. It's like, don't talk about it. It'll heal itself.
Right.
You'll get over it.
Yeah.
You know, and you don't, you know, and it needs to be talked about. And we need to be believed, you know, and there's so many of us going through the same thing. Yeah. And when we do talk about it, people are like, oh, that happened to me. Or I've heard people who say, well, you know, things just happen. Sometimes it just has to happen, like it's a rite of passage.
Yeah, it seems as though it's, you know what? So I read a statistic, and it basically said 1 in 4 girls will be sexually assaulted before the age of 18. And for those girls under 6, 50% of those perpetrators would be family members. So can you just imagine, as a child or as a parent? I'm not a parent. You know, I have friends that are parents, and some of them are very, very protective. They won't allow their children to spend a night over certain people's houses and things like that. But it's like, you have to watch out for your own family sometimes, you know?
Exactly. And that is...
that's scary.
That's the crazy thing. I was very sheltered growing up. And actually in a blog post I'm working on now, I talked about that and how, you know, I didn't really go anywhere. We really didn't visit too much with other people. I didn't really have a lot of friends come over to my house. I wasn't allowed to go to many. I think I may have went to one sleepover, and I had one sleepover, and that's all I remember. There was so much like of this like protection and sheltering against everyone else. And that's what I talked about in the blog post on Helping Her, was the fact that, you know, my mom talked to me about strangers. So she would speak to me about, you know, not letting strangers touch me in inappropriate places. And, you know, we spoke a little bit about sex, but not too much because I was only 8. But, you know, a few years down the line, it happens to me, and it's a person that I do know and I do trust. And I'm just caught off guard, like, okay, well, what do I do in this case? There were so many precautions taken for people that I did not know, you know, but, you know, for it to happen in my own home, it just like, it shattered me. And I guess that's another reason why I just became so quiet about it, because I was like, I have no clue what to do. I wasn't prepared for this.
I want to go back to what you said about it being so common, especially in the Black community. As of right now, I mean, I don't have the statistics, but I'm pretty sure, well, not pretty sure, but I almost feel like it's common just in general. And so I'm reading this book. Well, the name of the book is called Trauma and Recovery by Judith Lewis Herman, MD. She stated that sexual traumatic events are so common in women's lives that they can hardly be described as outside the range of ordinary experiences, right? And so that only the fortunate find it unusual. So it's almost like you have to be very fortunate to think that's weird nowadays, because it's like you said, it's almost like a rites of passage. It's like, oh, you was molested, so was I. It's like it's so common now. It's like it's almost like divorce, because divorce is so common. It's like something you pretty much know has happened to someone else. That's pretty sad to find that something so awful, especially by a family member, to be so usual, you know?
Right. And that's what like makes it hard for you to like heal, because it's almost like you have to get used to it, or you have to just get over it, because
it's so normalized now. And that says a lot about the mentality of society now, or the fact that it just happens so much that it don't even have any shock value no more. It's like, oh, okay. Moving on. And that's sad. That's really sad when you think about it. I do want to say something, because like my experience, I'm not going to get into detail today, but my experience is kind of horrific. Like it goes, like I said, it started with one person and ended with another, and between the two it was pretty awful. But like I said, I didn't expose it until last year, and so even some of my own family members didn't know. And what really bothers me, because you talked about how your mom ultimately chose your perpetrator, right? Just as though, I feel like initially mom chose me, but after time healed her wounds, then she ultimately chose the perpetrator over me. And that happened more than once, because it happened with my cousin. It happened again with her boyfriend, because she knew what her boyfriend was doing, but she decided to stay with him. So ultimately she did choose the perpetrators over me. And so people like our mothers, the author of Trauma and Recovery, she talks about that. She calls them bystanders. And pretty much bystanders are usually the ones caught in the conflict between victims, us, and perpetrators. Something she did say, bystanders are forced to take sides. And it can be very tempting to take the side of the perpetrator, because all the perpetrator is doing is asking the bystander to do nothing. Like, just don't do nothing. Don't say nothing. Don't intervene. Like, that's easy. It's easy to not do anything, and that's all the perpetrator really wants to do, right? Like, if you don't do nothing, then the issue gonna go away. So the perpetrator appeals to the universal desire to see, hear, and speak no evil, meaning don't talk about it. We're not even gonna discuss it, act like it's not even there. But the victim, on the other hand, asks the bystander to share the burden of the pain. The victim demands action, engagement, remembering, so it's almost like if I'm a bystander, or if I was my mom or your mom, it's almost easier to side with the perpetrator, because it's like, with the perpetrator, I don't have to do anything. I don't have to even acknowledge that this problem exists. But if I'm gonna it's like if I choose my daughter, especially, so in my mom's case, if I choose my daughter, that means I'm gonna have to deal with the conflict that's going to come from my family. I'm going to have to deal with the backlash. It's a lot you have to deal with. And so it's almost like, I don't have time to go through all that. I'm just going to not say anything.
Just take the easy route.
Yeah. It's a very cruel conflict. And one thing about your story, I feel like it's way easier for the perpetrator to convince a bystander when they can get them by themselves. So the fact that your mom asked your stepdad about this incident without anybody else involved, it was a lot easier for him to convince her to take his side, versus you and her addressing them together or with somebody else,
Right. And I think that would have definitely changed things around had I done that. And sometimes I know it's probably off, but I think like maybe I should have confronted him in front of her or something like that. But I was just so scared. And I was like, well, maybe if I start with her and kind of get her on my side, like when you're going in battle and you need somebody to back you up. Like that's how I felt. Yeah. And it just went the opposite direction of where I thought it was going to be. But yeah, I feel like she did take the easy route. And like I said, in conversation lately, I've noticed I really do feel like she possibly does believe me and is respecting me in her own way as not speaking about him. But you're still with him. Right. And that says so much. And you still have not, well, I don't know what kind of conversation they have now, but I just don't feel like the conversation was really had like it should have been. And, you know, just being in the family for so long. I mean, he's been my stepdad since I was 2 years old. He's been around all the family. We've traveled and visited and went to reunions, all these things like that. So for something like that to surface to family and all that, you know, I know it would have been huge. And then the fact that I didn't even mention that he's a minister. Wow. You know, and involved in the church. Wow. So that's another level to that as well. Yeah. And it's like, and that's another thing that could have happened in conversation too. Like, look, if this gets out, this is going to taint my reputation type of thing. You know, and so it's a lot of levels to it. And of course, you know, it's like, okay, do I fight for my daughter and let all this mess get out and my family broken apart and this and that? Or do I just side with him and just subside my feelings or whatever? But in either way, the family's still broken.
Exactly. You know, there's so many layers to this that this podcast can go 100 different ways. Like, we can talk about why our parents decided to choose the perpetrators and their history, like whether or not your mom had the same issue growing up, because I know my mom did. And, you know, her mom chose her perpetrator over her. So it's almost like a cycle, you know? I mean, like I said, that's a whole different podcast. Like, there's so many layers to it.
Yes, it could go on forever. And actually, I think she probably did. My dad actually mentioned something like that she mentioned to him when they were married. And so that might be part of it too. And I know, you know, as generations go, you know, the older generations, they really, really swept it under the rug. So, you know, us telling our parents now is like, well, when it happened to me, it was something in the rug, so I'm just going to keep it going. Exactly. Type of thing. Exactly. You know, whereas with us, you know, if you have a child and that happens, of course, you're going to be like, oh, no, this has to stop now.
Right.
You know?
Well, you would hope that that person would address it. Because,
of course not. But.
Yeah. I don't know. But you're right. I think it's a generational thing because, you know, when I made that YouTube video, the first thing my mom told me was, you know, it happened to me and nobody did anything about it. So it's like, it is a generational thing for one, but two is like, she took the information she knew, instead of addressing it directly, she made it about her and kind of created an excuse as to why. But let's talk about your brother. So do your brothers know?
They don't, actually. Now, I haven't seen... I have two brothers. One of them I've seen like a couple years ago. He came to visit. And the other I have not seen since they left, and he's still in Alaska. And we hardly talk. Now, the oldest of the two, he'll call me every now and then, like maybe every few months, just to check on me, see how I'm doing or whatever. And actually, the last time we did talk, he asked me why I don't talk to his dad. We're half brother and sister. Okay. And I was just like, I just don't want to talk about it right now. And then so he goes, well, whatever it is, you need to just forgive him and move on. It can't be that big of a deal, whatever it is. You know, with like a little attitude or whatever, like, you need to talk to him. And I was just like I said, I'm not trying to talk about it right now. Like, I couldn't even get it together to tell him. I didn't know how, you know.
So at what point do you feel like disclosing that information to your brothers is necessary? Because I feel like, just based off what you're telling me, your brother has a feeling that whatever you're not talking to your stepdad about is a very trivial incident or a very, you know, petty situation. Like, just get over it. You know, maybe y'all had an argument about, you know, Thanksgiving dinner. You know what I'm saying? He don't know the depth. And I'm pretty sure your mom ain't telling him. His dad ain't telling him. So he is like kind of left in the dark. He don't know who his dad is. I'm not saying that you need to go tell him tonight, but
and I feel like with all of this, with the blog, the podcast, and preparing with all of this, I've definitely been getting more courage to do so. But I also feel like it's this fear that because I went to my mom with this and she didn't believe me and didn't side with me, I feel like it would be the same with him. And, you know, that's their dad. So they adore him, you know, like, he can do no wrong. So I really feel like even when I do tell him, it's going to be like this, whatever, that didn't happen type of thing. We were there. What are you talking about? You know? And so that's why it's like, it's been hard for me. It was actually, I think it was easier for me to come to my mom about it than with my brothers, because it's like, that's your dad, you know? And so for someone coming to you and saying your dad did this, it's like, you know, I don't know how he would take it.
Well,
but I know I need to do it soon.
Regardless
of
how they take it, they can't dispute whether, you know, they can't dispute your truth. So just how I feel like when my family kind of tried to address it with me, like, you can't take away the fact that it happened. Whether you believe me or not is a different story, but you, especially because I was a child, it's like, you know, because we've had this conversation, like, people were involved. So you can deny it or you can choose to not discuss it, but one thing you can't do is try to act like my truth is not my truth, you know?
Exactly.
But here's another thing. So I know you haven't told a lot of people, or as far as in your family, but I know, you know, since I put mine out, my family knows. And I got some support. I got a lot of backlash, but then I got some people who was like, you need to go and correct that story because you have everybody thinking that all your family members knew about it. I didn't know, and I don't want nobody to think I knew. And it's like, are you more concerned about whether or not somebody thinks you know the information, or are you concerned about what happened, the actual event, right?
Right.
So this brought me to my next point, because the author of Trauma and Recovery, she talks about the bystanders who try to remain neutral. And that's how I feel like I had some family members who was just like, just don't put me in it. I'm like, you know, I don't know if I should be offended that you just want to have no involvement in the situation, or you just don't want anybody to think you're attached to it. But she talked about how it's morally impossible to remain neutral in these types of conflicts. Like, if you choose to remain neutral, it's almost like in any type of conflict, actually. If you choose to remain neutral, it's almost like you're choosing the side of the perpetrator, because you're choosing to remain quiet. And that's all the perpetrator really wants you to do anyway, right?
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
So I just had to say that about those family members who remain neutral. And so for that reason alone, it's hard for me to kind of foster any type of relationship or even engage in any type of holiday activities with any family members, because back home in Memphis, you know, they're all there, and the majority of them either didn't agree or they wanted to remain neutral. So it's like, I don't want to interact with any of you. Like, I don't want to interact with those who want to remain neutral. I don't want to interact with those who, you know, don't even want to address the issue. So that kind of furthers the brokenness of the connections. It's like, okay, I'm done with everybody, you know?
Right. And that's how I actually had an opportunity to see them over the summer, and I didn't. There was a family reunion in Atlanta where a lot of my mom's family is located. And I haven't been to Atlanta probably since I was maybe 11. And so a lot of, you know, the people out there I still talk to. And they're like, oh, we hope you and your family can come. I even designed their family reunion T-shirts and everything. And I had plans of going, but I found out that they were going. And it was like this last minute debate, like, okay, should I or should I not? And I decided not. And even my brother, the same one, he was just like, you know, are you going? And it's that. And of course I wanted to see him, but it was just like, I'm not going to be there in this awkwardness. And one thing I know when it comes to my mom, like, she doesn't like conflict. So I can see her, you know, with the fake smiles and things like, and even my stepdad, oh, hey, E, and that's what he used to call me. And I'm just like, I can't do that.
Right.
I can't, you know, I haven't talked to y'all in years. Y'all don't pick up the phone. You don't, you know, ask about your grandkids or anything like that. And for me to go to a family reunion of all places, I'm not good with that whole like being fake thing. So many you know, there's so many things that were not talked about, things that are swept under the rug, and it's like, you can't just throw me into this happy place.
Yeah, I agree.
You can't, like, any situation. Even was it last year around this time, I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, and so, you know, I wasn't doing too well. And I remember my mom and it was funny, at that time she was calling me like nonstop. When I was diagnosed, I called her because a couple of people in our family had diabetes. And so, you know, I just wanted to get some information. So from there, it was like, we talked and texted like every other day. And we had never talked that much. And so there was a conversation we had when she said, well, if you like, I talked to my husband, and it would be okay if you all come out to Alaska, and I can, you know, if you need help, you know, with what's going on with you and this and that, like, to live. And I'm like, no, I'm good.
Right.
You know, like how does that come out of nowhere? Like, you know what I told you years ago. You know we don't talk. We still have not had the right conversation to get down and dirty with everything that's been going on. And then to offer me to come live out there thousands of miles away in the same house with my children, my girls, you know, with this man. And so I was just like, no, thank you. I'm good. Like, I'd rather struggle than do that, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it just made things, and like you said, you know, how you're talking about how they invite the person over and, you know, want you to interact. And it's just like, how is this even okay to you?
I really truly believe that they want to forget that it happened so much that they don't even acknowledge it. Like,
right.
Just like you
or
said.
It's like, oh, well, enough time has passed.
Yeah.
So it should be okay now.
Oh, or they may hit you with but we're family. You know, you supposed to stick with family. I'm like, are you crazy? Like my mom, that's my mom's favorite saying. Like, you know, you got to stick with your family. No, you don't. You don't stick with family who do you harm. Like, where is that written? Like, I would never allow myself to be put in a position over and over and over again. No, it's not going to happen. And just like you said, you didn't go to that family reunion. Same thing with me. Like, my mom, just this past Thanksgiving, she wanted me to go to Virginia with my family. And, you know, and I'm like, wait, you actually think I'm going to fly 16 hours away from my own comfort to be in somebody else's home who just attacked me months earlier about what I said? What sense does that make? Why do you think I will put myself in a position to cause myself any type of mental distress? Or even like, no, like, you can do that. You know, I'm not going to do that. And if that and like the fact that you even asked me to do that makes me feel some type of way. Like, at what point do you stop asking me to subject myself to abuse over and over again? Like I said, my cousin, he was in my life all the way to, like, I got to the point to where I stopped wanting to come home from college. You know, and that was like maybe my 3rd year. Like, I would go home and we would have family get together. And even like, I can remember clear as day, this is like my 1st year of college. My cousin still whispering inappropriate things in my ear. Like, oh, you look good. You and your friend. Like, really? You don't say stuff like that. So it's like, when I got to the point to where I refused to put myself in that position, I stopped. But don't continue to ask me. Don't be like, oh, you going to XYZ house with us? No. So-and-so, no, I don't care. I wish them well, but I'm not going to put myself in that position. You know?
Right.
And even if it's a holiday, and you're right, it sucks because it is a holiday. And for you, it's a little different because you have your own family. I still don't have a husband or children, which is fine. So, you know, you know, my family situation looks a little different. I have friends that are like family to me now. So, yeah, I choose not to interact with my immediate family during holidays. So,
and that makes it so hard because even the ones that have no idea what's going on, you know, it affects that relationship with them as well. It's like, you know,
it has to. You can't.
I kept getting the phone calls, text messages. Are you coming? You know, we haven't seen you since you were a kid. And, you know, my heart is like, oh, I want to be there so bad. But I don't want to have to relive anything or, you know, like, I'm not ready for all of that.
But I think for you, though, because there are so many people who don't know, the best way to kind of figure out how you stand or where you stand with those people is to be open about it. Because like my family, everybody knows. So it's either you with me or you're not. And if you're not, then I don't feel bad for not interacting with you, you know?
And that's the good thing. It kind of, it's just, it helps you to know where people stand in your life. You know, when you reveal something like to you, and what their reaction is helps you to understand what type of person they are and how loyal they are to you and, you know, your relationship with them.
Yep, I agree. So I think you have to kind of draw that line in the sand with people, because that's if you won't. Because I think if once you make it clear, then you could have a relationship with the people who was willing to stand by your side. But you don't know that yet because you're not willing to share that with them. So I think
I'm like slowly easing my way. You know, this right here, putting this out there, you know, on these platforms is like my way of, okay, I'm ready to slowly, you know, because I'm sure, you know, I have plenty of family who read my blogs or, you know, look at what I share on social media, and they probably read it and just not said anything yet or whatever. So,
well, the best thing you can do is take this podcast and email it directly to them so you know they got it.
Right.
And say, here, listen to this, you know. Okay, so we talked about your brother. Do you think there could be any reconciliation between you and your mom?
I think so. Always in time. Eventually it's going to have to come up. Eventually we'll see each other again. I don't even know how it would go, because I just know, like, there have been a couple times when I brought it up, or other situations that were kind of touchy, and it was just kind of like this, I don't want to talk about it thing, I'm the mom, you're the daughter.
You still get that?
Yeah.
Oh,
so
I do too.
It's like, and I don't get loud or anything like that. I'm very calm. I get emotional, especially when it comes to her. So I get really emotional. I'll cry before anything, before I can get out my words out sometimes. But so, like, I don't even know how it would be. But I do know that we have to have the conversation again and again and again and again until something happens, until we come to an understanding, because I desire that relationship with her.
Do you think there could be reconciliation even if she continues to choose her husband over you?
Even now, like, I'm willing to, I forgive her now. If you have to be able to forgive others in order for God to forgive you. And so that's my main thing. Even with him, I've forgiven him, but it's still like, that, yeah, you can forgive but never forget type of thing. And no, our relationship will never be the same. Like, I don't want to talk to you or anything like that, but hey, I forgive you because I have to. And it's the same thing with my mom. I'm not going to cut off or sever our relationship because of it, just as long as you respect the boundaries that I have now. And even more so now, because I have daughters, I keep saying it, like, I have to protect not only myself, but them. There's a chance for everything. And, I forgive her for it. Like, I don't even know what to say. It's really hard to deal with. It's very hard. I mean, and the holidays are here. You want to plan trips to Alaska of all time,
of all
around
places,
Christmas,
like
and go
Alaska,
play in the snow, and
right.
I like, emotionally I can't,
and that's okay. You don't have to. Don't force yourself to be in a situation that makes you uncomfortable.
Right. Right.
And that's the same way with my mom. Like, we have a very strained relationship. She don't understand that because she refuses to acknowledge things that's happened. And I feel the same way. Like, I feel like the only way we're going to get to the place you want us to be is if you acknowledge what happened. If you continue to kind of dodge the issue, then there's no real relationship, because you're choosing to not even address the hurt and pain not only that other family members cause, but even you caused,
Right.
So,
and that's all I'm really looking for, is that addressing that. Okay, Aaron, yes, I do believe you. I'm sorry.
And I'm not even talking about, like, I feel like for me, it takes not even addressing it, like, address it without the excuses. Like, leave it at,
like,
don't say, oh, yeah, but it happened to me too. No, I know, but we're talking, if you
right, it's not about you.
Right, exactly.
It's about with this situation right here, me.
But again, like, I feel like I said, it's so many layers to it that, like I said, it did happen to my mom too. So I feel like she has to do her own healing before she can even see how that generational curse was placed upon me. And you can't acknowledge nothing until you expose it, right? So there's no way we're gonna be able to heal anything until she acknowledges it. So until then I'm not even like you said, I forgive her. I forgive my cousin. I forgive everybody who tried to attack me about it. Like, I have no hate in my heart, but there's one thing though, I'm never going to put myself in a situation to continue to be hurt. Like, I'm going to protect my own mental state. I'm going to protect my own peace, like, because I don't have to choose to continue to suffer, right? Because I just refuse. Like, and I almost feel like back in the day, it is a generational thing, like we talked about. Back in the day, they chose to stay in those situations, even after, they were long grown, 30, 40 years old, but they choose to stay connected and continue to put themselves in those mentally traumatizing situations. Right. Because
I don't believe that's for, like, so many situations, even, abusive, all types. Back in the day, it was like, well, it's just the way of life. He's paying the bills.
Or even it's like, but they're family. Whatever. And I'm like, no, family can be just as family members are just people. They're people.
Mm-hmm.
So any person can be a bad person. Like,
Right.
I mean, Donald Trump is somebody's family. You know, it's like
Right,
Adolf
right.
Hitler is somebody's family. They're bad
Mm-hmm.
people. So I'm not going to choose to, just because we're bound by blood, like sometimes blood can be bad blood, you know, and I'm not going to just willingly subject myself to that trauma over and over just because, you know?
Right. I want to bring up, like, when we talk about forgiveness, like, although I didn't really confront my stepdad, I remember there was a day after church. See, my husband, well, he was my boyfriend at the time. He knew for a while, and he didn't say anything, but he would, like, say little things to my stepdad or whatever. And so one day, I don't know exactly what the conversation was, but they got into it after church. And I think my husband, well, boyfriend at the time, had pushed him because he said something. I think he mentioned, you know, molesting me or whatever. And so he said that my stepdad told him, you know, what happens in my house stays in my house type of thing.
Oh, that
And so
sounds about right.
that's what, you know, caused him to, you know, get physical. And so, you know, of course, everybody's looking at him and not my stepdad because they didn't hear the conversation. They looking at all that going on. So it was later on. So, of course, that separated the relationship even more. Like, oh, you know, we told you we didn't like him, that type of thing. And of course, I didn't know what was happening until after the fact. But it wasn't long after. I remember my stepdad gave me a ride somewhere. I didn't have a car. And it was around the time I came out to my mom. I don't know if I told her at that time or not. Like I said, via my husband, because he was like, you know, really in defense mode. So we were in the car. It was just myself and my stepdad. Before I got out, he was like, wait, you know, just want to let you know anything that I've done to you. I just want to let you know I'm sorry.
Maybe not in time for you and me, but someday at Christmas time.
Someday at Christmas, we'll see a land with no hungry children, no